35 years. I've known him off and on for 21 of those 35 years. He is a candidate for sheriff, is qualified for the ballot. So we're going to ask him the same questions that we asked Bob Doyle this evening, same questions we asked him yesterday with a couple of additions, which we also asked Bob, that have come up since we started.
More serious questions.
Yeah. And then, of course, at the end, we'll give Ken the same opportunity that we gave Bob Doyle to address you and tell you what he's about, what's important to him, what it means to him to be sheriff, and what he thinks is important to the community that he seeks to serve. I just want to make sure you know everybody on our Political Action Committee. Marco Inocente is the chairman of our committee. I know you've known Marco for a while, as with Jim Hickey and Jim's dad. Donna McLaren. Donna is an SSA in the jail. We, as you may not know, we're in the process of admitting professional staff members of the Sheriff's Office to the DSA. So Donna's going to represent those folks on our Political Action Committee. And Scott Hagmark, who is our treasurer of our PAC, and he is currently assigned, of course, President. So thank you, sir, for that. Thank you.
Thanks for your patience. Getting us started.
Sorry.
Peace officers' personnel files are deemed confidential by the California Penal Code. In the past, the district attorney and other county agencies have requested the release or review of these files, as well as our internal investigations files. What is your position on this? And specifically, what would you do to protect the confidentiality of sheriff's personnel files?
I think it's the worst thing that can happen, and I think every one of our files should remain as confidential as possible. On the other hand, I understand this whole Brady thing. Brady thing. I promise I won't mumble now that this is up. Right? So, I think the only way to make as much of a political statement as possible is if we're served with any kind of a request from the DA's office, we tell them to get a court order. And don't get a court order for everybody in this particular trial. Get a court order for every single file. I want a separate one from each one. Take it to county council. I think the only thing we can do is put up as much of a roadblock as possible and let the DA know that we're not going down the path quietly.
The Marin County Board of Supervisors has decided to merge the Office of the Coroner, if you haven't heard about it, with the Office of the Sheriff. What is your plan for this merger?
Well, as you may know, I've spent most of my time in the Coroner's Department, the Coroner's Office. The merge, it's done. It's going to happen. There's nothing we can do to undo that. I think what I can bring to the table in that merge is making it as peaceful as possible and certainly as seamless as possible. I've assisted 4 other departments in the state in the last 8 or 10 years. Actually, I helped one about 20 years ago, and things were quite a bit different then. To make the merge, to make the change from separate offices to a combined office, the most recent being Santa Clara County. And so I've been down the path a little bit. I know the pitfalls, I know some of the foibles that come up, and the heartaches that come up, and there's a lot of them from time to time, depending on how that merge is done. And what I hope to bring to this is the most seamless application of what the Board of Supervisors has put into play.
Okay, question number 3. The DSA bargains for our members' contract with the county. The support of the sheriff is essential to securing a contract that keeps us competitive in the market. Please provide some examples where you have supported such efforts in your organization and comment on your strategy for keeping us competitive in the market.
When I was first with the Coroner's Department, I was in the MAPE union and ended up being in their bargaining committee to negotiate with the county. I did that for 2 years, and then later on ended up in admin in my department, and ultimately ended up doing some of the bargaining from the admin side. So I've sat on both sides of that table in negotiations. I lived through the Tom Campanella years. I don't know if any of you know anything about his methods or his reputation, but they certainly were legion. I have been on both sides of the table, and I think I can bring that sense to that. You're absolutely right. The sheriff needs to be on your side in this thing, and as I see it, the single most important thing facing the DSA in the next 10 or 15 years is going to be survival. This county's going to shrink, the government's going to shrink. We don't like it, but it's going to happen. We're already seeing just little remnants of it. Bringing the SSAs in, bringing all of your professional staff in is going to help bolster your organization. If we can get probation to come in too, there's strength in numbers. The county listens to numbers. And of course with members comes money, and the money makes a difference. So in order for us, and I'm talking me, the sheriff, and you, the DSA, in order for us to make this thing stay together, we've got to come up with a plan now for 10 years from now. We need to come up with a plan now for 4 years from now. We need to be way ahead of the curve so that we can maintain the members and not lose positions. There's going to be some that have to go. We can do it strategically if we plan ahead, but if we sit here and wait and say, well, what are we going to do next year? And then what are we going to do next year? We're going to be so far behind the 8 ball that they'll own us. I think that we need to develop a plan early on and make it work.
Peace officer disciplinary issues cover a broad range of territory, from minor car accidents to the use of deadly force. As a department head, the sheriff is the final arbiter of discipline. Please talk about your experience in dealing with discipline in your department and how you would utilize that experience as sheriff in the future.
We don't have to do any discipline in my office. We just threaten autopsies. It just makes the whole thing go away. No, we haven't had very many disciplinary issues in my department. I've been there 35 years, as you said. When we did have, they were handled through the PMR chain, escalating discipline, and fortunately nobody's ever had to be fired out of my office. Only really had 2 issues in 35 years. Prior to being in the employ of the county, I operated a retail store, and prior to that I managed 2 different businesses with up to 15 employees in one of them. I haven't had an awful lot of problems with any of that. I do understand the disciplinary function within the county structure. In my eyes, discipline needs to be fair. If 2 people are in trouble for the same thing, the discipline has to go the same way, and it doesn't have to be in the same incident. If it's 5 years later, it still needs to be fair. I believe it needs to be timely. And if there's somebody in that chain that is up for discipline, they have to be disciplined. If you're stepped out of line, then I'm going to hold your feet to the fire. You have to be accountable for your actions, as well as I will, and the command staff will also.
Thank you.